Intimacy of touch with Moon in Leo. When you want to be worshipped through contact, but fear being touched without spotlight. With the Moon in Leo, touch feels like reverence. You want to be held like a miracle, kissed like a declaration, touched like you're someone unforgettable. You crave warmth, consistency, and adoration, but not the quiet kind. Your body wants touch that says, I see you, I choose you, I admire you. Not just casual closeness, but intentional affection. But underneath the desire for grandness lies a more tender truth. You want to be known through touch, not just praised by it. And that kind of vulnerability can leave your moon exposed in ways you're not always prepared to receive. You're not shy with affection. In fact, you give it generously. Hugs that linger, hands that rest on backs, kisses that say more than words. When you love, you touch with loyalty. And when someone mirrors that energy, you bloom. You come alive. Your skin becomes a stage where affection plays out as ritual. But if that energy fades, if your partner's touch becomes routine or distracted, you feel it immediately. Not just as a drop in physicality, but as a crack in respect. Because for Leo Moon, touch equals emotional affirmation. What others see as just a hand on your leg, you interpret as proof or absence of being chosen. You're not superficial, you're sensitive. And touch that feels automatic or forgetful doesn't nourish you. It wounds you. You want to be touched like the center of someone's orbit, not the side note in their routine. If their affection becomes passive, your warmth cools. You stop initiating. You start wondering, have I lost my place in their heart? But here's where your moon gets caught. You expect your partner to intuit your need for meaningful contact without always saying it out loud. You want to be met in your expressive style of affection, and when you're not, you feel rejected, but hide it behind pride. Instead of asking, can you hold me like you used to? You shrug, laugh, withdraw. You might act unbothered, but inside you're aching for someone to touch you like you're still their favorite story. You're brave in many ways, but letting someone touch you without performance, without grandeur or posing, is harder. It's one thing to be embraced in celebration, in confidence, in success, but to be held when you're uncertain, quiet, or grieving, that touch feels more dangerous. It doesn't confirm your strength. It confirms your humanness. And sometimes your Leo moon isn't sure how to let that be seen. To deepen your intimacy with touch, you must allow it to meet all versions of you, not just the radiant one. Let your partner stroke your hair when you failed. Let them hold your hand when you're unsure of yourself. Let your body receive affection when you haven't earned it, performed for it, or looked your best. That's the true healing. Being loved in moments that feel undeserving, and learning that you never were. You also need to separate admiration from physical affection. Sometimes people love you deeply, but show it quietly. They rest their head on your chest without words. They trace circles on your skin with no speech to accompany it. And your moon, so attuned to expression, might miss it. But these subtle forms of touch are not less real. They are often more honest. You must learn to feel the quiet touch as devotion too. And speak your needs. Say, I need to be touched like I matter. Say, when you hold me like that, I feel adored. Say, your affection grounds me. Let your partner know that touch isn't just a preference, it's your emotional lifeline. And in that naming, you make room for love to rise in forms more sustaining than performance. Ritual touch, daily touch, wordless touch. The kind your moon quietly hopes for, even as it dazzles with outer brightness. Because when you're touched with intention, not for the show, but for the soul, you soften, you stop performing, you start trusting. Your chest stops puffing, your heart opens. And that is the intimacy your Leo moon most deeply desires. To be cherished not just when you shine, but when you simply are. And to know through touch that love doesn't just admire you, it stays. Intimacy of sensate with moon in Leo. When you want to be felt through every sense, but struggle to stay without applause. Moon in Leo doesn't just experience love, it wants to inhabit it. You crave sensory connection that feels radiant, intentional, cinematic. You want to be seen in candlelight, kissed like a crown is being placed on your head, touched like your body is sacred terrain. You want the music turned up, the scent remembered, the gaze unwavering. For you, the physical world is where devotion comes alive. But the intimacy of sensate doesn't just ask to be felt boldly, it asks to be felt slowly. And your moon doesn't always know how to settle into the quiet of presence when it's not being reflected back with grandeur. You read attention like firelight. When someone is attuned to you, really watching, really feeling, really present, you open. You become generous, warm, expressive. But when their gaze drifts, when their touch loses intention, when the moment becomes muted, something in you starts to retreat. Because the Leo moon doesn't just want affection, it wants to be witnessed. And when that witnessing dims, your entire sensory experience dulls along with it. You're naturally dramatic in your expression, and you seek partners who can meet you there. You want the long looks across the table, the slow dances in the kitchen, the perfume they remember, the way they say your name like it belongs in poetry. But sometimes, you equate sensual presence with emotional performance. You expect sensation to feel grand, and when it doesn't, you wonder if the intimacy has faded. But some of the deepest sensate moments come not with sparkle, but with stillness. You may overlook the quiet touch that lands like a whisper, the morning silence as they pour your coffee, the way they breathe in sync with you at night. These details don't announce themselves. They don't spark applause, but they are pure presence. And unless you slow down, you may miss them. Your moon wants to be felt out loud, but the soul often speaks in subtler languages. You must learn to feel them, not just be dazzled by them. Sometimes, you unintentionally perform in your sensory world. You wear what you know they'll notice. You touch in a way that draws attention. You express affection as a form of storytelling. But receiving love through the senses means surrendering your need to be the focal point. It means letting love land, not just letting it reflect. Can you feel their hand on your skin without interpreting its meaning? Can you hear their voice and let it move through you, not just feed your worth? There's also a vulnerability in letting someone sense the parts of you that don't shine. The tiredness in your posture, the quiver in your voice. The days when you don't feel magnetic. You may hide during those seasons, afraid your partner will stop responding to you if your sensory offering isn't at full flame. But the truth is, real sensate intimacy is born not when you impress, but when you invite, when you let someone witness the uncurated version of your humanity and still choose to stay close. To deepen this, allow your sensory world to include quiet. Eat meals slowly without orchestrating the vibe. Let affection unfold without a plan. Let their gaze rest on your face in silence, and don't rush to smile. Let yourself be sensed without shaping the moment. And when you do offer touch, scent, warmth, do it not to be adored, but to connect. That's the shift from performance to intimacy, from stage to sanctuary. Tell your partner, I love when you notice how I feel without me saying it. Or when you linger in the moment, I feel wanted. These aren't demands for attention, they're bridges to presence. Help them understand that your sensory sensitivity is your moon's compass, that your emotional security is deeply tied to how immersed they are when they're with you. Because when you are sensed without spectacle, when your body is held without hurry, when your soul is seen even in the quiet, your moon melts. The need for applause fades, and in its place rises something far deeper, being known without performance. Touch not as a symbol, but as a human. Love not just for how you shine, but for how you feel, fully, fiercely, now. Intimacy of kindness with Moon in Leo. When you give from the heart, but feel unloved when it's not echoed loud enough. With the Moon in Leo, your kindness is warm, loyal, and radiant. You give with your whole chest, gestures big and bold, words that uplift, presence that says, you matter to me. You're the one who remembers birthdays, who makes people feel like royalty when they walk into a room. Your generosity is emotional and theatrical, because that's how you feel love best, when it's shown. But when the kindness you give is met with quiet, or is absorbed without recognition, your moon begins to flicker. Because for Leo, kindness without acknowledgement feels a little like being unseen. You don't give for praise, but you do give for connection. You want your partner to feel the meaning behind your gestures. You want them to see your care and say, I know you did this because you love me. If they shrug it off or take it for granted, it cuts deeper than you let on. Your moon might laugh, brush it off, move on, but inside you're wondering, Do they even see how much I pour into this love? You show affection by elevating the people you love. You'll gas them up in front of others, defend them fiercely, remind them of their brilliance when they forget. But when you're the one struggling, when you need to be softened, reassured, or emotionally lifted, you rarely ask. You hope they'll sense it. You hope they'll mirror your kindness back. And when they don't, you go quiet. Not out of punishment, but out of heartbreak. There's a deep vulnerability in admitting that you need kindness too. That beneath the bright spirit and confident exterior is a childlike heart that sometimes aches to hear, "You're doing enough. You're enough." But your pride makes that hard to ask for. You don't want to seem needy. You don't want pity. So instead, you give more. You double down on generosity. And quietly, you begin to wonder if anyone will ever give to you with the same warmth you offer so freely. This can make you susceptible to giving from a place of expectation, even if unspoken. You might not say it aloud, but part of you keeps score. Would they do this for me? Do they even notice how hard I'm trying? And when your kindness isn't returned in equal measure, your disappointment can turn into withdrawal, or worse, into coldness masked as strength. Your moon needs to be recognized, and when it's not, your light dims, not because you've run out of love, but because you've stopped feeling safe offering it. To deepen this intimacy, you must learn to give from fullness, not from the hope of reciprocation. Ask yourself, is this act coming from joy, or from a quiet ache to be seen? And then, be honest about what you need. Say, when you appreciate the little things I do, it makes me feel connected. Or, sometimes I give so much because I don't know how to ask for love. I just hope it circles back. You also need to let your partner love you in their way. Maybe their kindness isn't as showy. Maybe it's quiet acts of service or soft presence instead of loud praise. Don't miss their care just because it doesn't come with fireworks. Let them love you imperfectly. Let them try. Let their warmth be enough, even if it's different than yours. And be kind to yourself. Your moon often pours outward without remembering to refill. Practice being generous inwardly. Speak to yourself the way you speak to your favorite people. Offer yourself applause when no one else does. Celebrate your effort. Acknowledge your heart. Because when your kindness is met, when your giving is received with reverence, and when you allow yourself to be cared for in return, you shine without burning out. You stop giving to earn love and start giving because you are love. And your moon, finally, feels what it's always craved, not just to be admired, but to be held, gently, consistently, without having to ask twice. Intimacy of growth with moon in Leo. When you want to evolve into the best together, but fear being outshined or outgrown. With the moon in Leo, you dream of love that rises. You want a relationship that inspires becoming, where both partners cheer each other's evolution, celebrate each other's glow-ups, and pursue greatness side by side. You're not afraid of growth. In fact, you need it to feel alive. But the intimacy of growth doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it's slow and uncertain. Sometimes your partner changes in ways you didn't expect. And that's when your Leo moon starts to ache. Because growth that disrupts the emotional spotlight you've built can feel like displacement, not development. You see your relationships as partnerships in excellence. You're generous in support. You'll hype your partner up, spotlight their wins, help them rise. But when they begin to change in ways that no longer orbit your shared identity, a quiet fear arises. Will they still see me as home? Will I still matter in this next version of them? You may not say it, but you start to perform more, giving more, shining brighter, trying to secure your place in their new world. Your moon links emotional safety with being chosen publicly. If their attention shifts inward or towards something you can't participate in, you may take it personally. You're not jealous of their growth. You're afraid of being left out of the light. Growth to your Leo moon is safest when it's shared. So when someone evolves alone, you start to wonder if the love is drifting with them. In your own growth, you often feel the pressure to stay impressive. You want to keep showing up as your best self, strong, loyal, expressive. But when your growth takes a turn toward vulnerability, confusion, or quiet breakdowns, you may shrink from intimacy. You don't want to be seen unsure. You want to be inspiring. And yet, the intimacy of growth requires you to be messy in front of those who love you. to be in process, to not know, to trust that even when you aren't shining, you're still worthy of being seen. You also struggle with slowness. You want breakthroughs, not plateaus. You want emotional movement that feels exciting, clear, narrated. But growth isn't always a spotlight moment. It's the long nights of emotional sorting. It's the quiet changes no one claps for. Your moon must learn to honor these low-light seasons. Because this is where intimacy deepens. Not in the celebration, but in the endurance. Sometimes your partner's growth won't reflect you. They'll pursue something you don't understand. They'll explore feelings you don't share. And your first instinct might be to redirect, gently or boldly, to bring the focus back to togetherness. But true intimacy means letting them wander, letting them become, trusting that love doesn't mean constant mirroring. It means freedom inside the bond. To build this muscle, say, I want to support your growth, even when it's unfamiliar to me. Or, I'm learning to be seen during my low days too, not just my bright ones. Let growth become a dialogue, not a performance. Let the fear of fading be replaced by a deeper trust that you're loved for who you are becoming, not just who you've been. And remember, being outshined isn't the same as being unloved. Sometimes your partner needs their moment. Sometimes you do. The beauty is in the rhythm, in taking turns, in clapping for each other, in being proud not just of what you've built together, but of how you've both grown inside it. Because when your Leo moon embraces growth with grace, love stops being about who's glowing brighter. It becomes about how you carry each other's light, even when it flickers, even when it shifts, even when it surprises you. And that kind of intimacy, that's legacy-level love. The kind that keeps growing long after the curtain closes. Intimacy of activity with Moon in Leo. When doing things together feels like being chosen, but you struggle when the applause fades. For the Moon in Leo, shared activity is more than quality time, it's emotional confirmation. You want to do things with your partner, not just for fun, but to feel central. Going to the farmer's market, planning a getaway, working on a shared project, these aren't just pastimes. They're unspoken statements. We matter. Look at what we're building together. And when those shared moments are full of laughter, attention, and mirrored energy, your Leo moon feels secure, nourished by mutual presence. But when your partner disengages, delays plans, or seems distracted in those moments, you feel it as a quiet dethroning. And that cuts deeper than anyone might realize. Activity, to you, is a stage where intimacy plays out. Not for show, but for meaning. You light up when your partner wants to collaborate, participate, create. Even mundane things, running errands, rearranging the furniture, become rituals of connection. But if they pull back, grow indifferent, or don't match your enthusiasm, your moon starts to question. Do they still care? Am I still their person? You won't always say it. You'll try to stay composed. But emotionally, you begin to dim. You want shared effort, not necessarily control, but contribution. If you plan a romantic weekend and they seem underwhelmed, it feels like rejection. If they forget your standing movie night or flake on a shared hobby, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel devalued. Because for Leo moon, shared activity is sacred. It's where love proves itself in action, not just words. And when that action disappears, your confidence begins to waver. You'll often respond by giving more, organizing, initiating, performing brightness even when your heart feels bruised. You want to recreate the magic, to bring the spark back. But underneath that effort is a longing that's hard to name. Show me I still matter. Show me you want to do life with me. If the pattern continues, you may withdraw emotionally while still showing up physically, present but privately hurting, waiting for your partner to choose you again through shared motion. You also struggle with stillness in activity. Your moon thrives on vitality, excitement, momentum. So when the relationship settles into quieter routines, less novelty, more repetition, you may begin to feel unseen. Not because love has gone, but because it no longer feels expressive. You want energy, visibility, emotional recognition. And when none of that is reflected back during shared activity, you begin to feel invisible in your own life. To deepen this form of intimacy, you must shift from asking, "Are we doing enough together?" to, "Are we emotionally present while we do it?" Let the focus move from performance to presence. Notice the subtle connections in simple acts. doing dishes side by side, reading in the same room, grocery shopping with music playing. Let these moments remind you, intimacy doesn't always need to be grand to be real. Communicate your emotional need behind the activity. Say, I feel loved when we create something together. Or, shared experiences make me feel close to you. Help your partner understand that your craving for engagement isn't about control or entertainment. It's about belonging. And also allow their version of activity to count, even if it's quieter, slower, or less choreographed than your own. And most importantly, let yourself feel chosen even when nothing is happening. When they reach for your hand in silence, when they look over at you across the room, when they sit next to you and exhale. Your Leo moon doesn't always need motion, it needs meaning. And meaning can be found not just in what you do, but in how they stay. Because when you allow shared activity to be an invitation, not a performance, when you open to presence, not just applause, your moon no longer fears fading. You stop needing the spotlight to prove you're loved. You know it in the way they show up for the ordinary. And in that knowing, your fire becomes less about being seen and more about being felt, deeply, daily, without having to earn it. Intimacy of allowance with moon in Leo. When you want love to feel unshakable, but struggle to let others be themselves without needing the spotlight to return. With the moon in Leo, you love hard, fiercely, with loyalty, pride, and a quiet hope that your devotion will be mirrored in kind. You want to be someone's center, a source of joy, admiration, and belonging. And you offer the same in return, often making the people you love feel like they're the only ones in the room. But the intimacy of allowance isn't about admiration, it's about letting go of control. It's about loving someone when they're not focused on you, when they're changing, when they're becoming someone different than who you first met. And that, for your Leo moon, can stir something deeper than jealousy, insecurity. You thrive when you feel seen, when your emotional presence is reflected, appreciated, applauded. So when a partner becomes more withdrawn, more private, more consumed with their own process, you might start to panic. Not loudly, but internally. You may begin to feel erased, as if their change in expression is a change in affection. But often it's not about you. They're not pulling away. They're simply turning inward. Still loving you, just from a quieter center. And your moon, so attuned to outward connection, struggles to recognize silent loyalty. You don't intentionally ask others to shrink, but your emotional need to feel central can create invisible pressure. You might expect your partner's expressions to orbit yours. You might find yourself interpreting their independence as disinterest, their solitude as withdrawal. You want them to glow, yes, but only if they remember who cheered for them first. There's a noble tenderness in that. But intimacy of allowance means trusting that your place in their heart doesn't vanish just because their attention shifts. You also hold a strong internal script about how love should look. Consistent affection, open pride, warm visibility. And when someone loves you in a way that's quieter, more inconsistent, or more self-contained, you may feel rejected. But love doesn't always speak in your dialect. Some people love best in retreat, in ambiguity, in private. And to honor them, you must learn to stay present without always being center stage. This applies to your own evolution too. Sometimes you feel you must keep being on, positive, expressive, impressive, to hold others close. But the intimacy of allowance asks you to be loved even in your dimmer moments, to say, I don't want to shine today, I just want to be. And to trust that the right people will still stay, not for your light, but for you. To grow in this intimacy, practice asking without attaching meaning to the response. Say, do you need space? I want to understand, not interfere. Or, you don't need to perform for me. Just be you. I'll adjust my light. These are the kinds of permissions that make others feel free around you. And ironically, that freedom only deepens loyalty. When people feel unboxed, they return with more love, not less. You may feel invisible at times. You may crave more validation than you're given. But that doesn't mean you're being forgotten. You're being trusted. And that's a deeper form of respect than attention. Not everyone loves loudly, but many love deeply. Learn to feel that depth, even when it doesn't echo like applause. And remember, your gift is making people feel golden in your presence. When you extend that gift without condition, When you let them grow, falter, evolve, and glow without pulling the focus back, you create the kind of love that doesn't need constant reaffirmation. Because it's rooted, real, not based in being the favorite, but in being trusted with freedom. Because when your Leo moon learns to loosen its grip, not on love, but on how it shows up, you stop fearing what someone else's change might mean about your place in their life. You realize you were never meant to be the constant center. You were meant to be the sun that stays warm, even when someone else needs to travel through their own shadow. And in that trust, you become what you've always longed to be, irreplaceable without needing to be loud about it. Intimacy of giving with Moon in Leo. When you give with glory, but quietly wonder who will give back to you like that. With the Moon in Leo, giving is an act of heart. You don't give halfway. You give big, lavishly, proudly, full of color and warmth. You celebrate those you love with sweeping gestures, gifts that are personal, words that are affirming, affection that radiates across the room. You make people feel chosen, special, seen, because that's how your moon feels most fulfilled. When love is offered not just sincerely, but boldly. But the intimacy of giving also asks for something you often withhold, receiving without performing, and letting your generosity come from fullness, not quiet fear. You give with loyalty that feels sacred. When someone is yours, whether romantically, platonically, or even in passing, you champion them. You uplift them. You make them feel like royalty in your kingdom of care. But there's a subtle hope inside your offerings, that the love you pour out will be returned with the same fire. Not because you're keeping score, but because you want to know you're mirrored in devotion. That your brightness is matched with presence, not just praise. When your giving goes unnoticed, or worse, unreciprocated, something in you dims. You might not admit it. You may continue to smile, stay gracious, but beneath that steady warmth, disappointment begins to hum. Don't they see how much I'm offering? Don't they know what this means to me? And if that ache persists, you may start to retreat, not loudly, but with subtle emotional distance. Your moon needs to feel that your love lands, not just touches. You also give in ways that are visible. You want your care to be recognized, not because you're vain, but because acknowledgement is intimacy for you. If your gesture is met with indifference or overlooked, it stings. You start to wonder if your love was received at all. And if you've learned that being impressive is the only way to stay safe in love, you may begin to confuse performance with connection. You try harder, not because it feels right, but because you're afraid to be forgotten. The hardest part? You rarely ask for what you need in return. Your pride protects your tenderness. You don't want to seem dependent, needy, worst of all, unappreciated. So instead, you overextend. You love louder, give more, reach harder. But the more you give without return, the lonelier it becomes. And your moon, which needs warmth as much as it gives it, starts to burn itself out. To deepen this form of intimacy, you must give without expectation of choreography. Let your generosity be sacred, not strategic. Give because it fills you, not because it holds your place. And when you feel unseen, say so. Gently, honestly. When I do these things, it's because I care deeply. And it means a lot to feel that care echoed. That doesn't make you demanding. That makes you available for real connection. You must also allow others to give differently. Their love may not come with the same show of light, but that doesn't mean it's dim. Sometimes the quieter gift, a consistent check-in, a hand on your shoulder, a gesture done without an audience is just as profound. Let yourself feel that offering, even if it's not your style. Let it count. And remember to give to yourself the way you do to others. Celebrate your own milestones. Speak to yourself with reverence. Don't wait for the echo. Sometimes your inner voice needs to be the first one to say, thank you for how much you love. Because when you give from wholeness, from joy, from authenticity, not from performance or fear, you become radiant in a way that doesn't burn out. You don't need to shine brighter to be loved. You just need to be received as you are. And when your moon learns that giving is not a test but a gift, you finally let love come back to you, freely, unasked, deserved, just as boldly as you've always offered it. Intimacy of receiving with Moon in Leo. When you shine so bright for others, but struggle to let their light land on you. With the Moon in Leo, being adored feels like a homecoming, but being nurtured can feel disorienting. You long to be celebrated, cherished, seen in all your brightness. And often, you are. People gravitate to your warmth. They reflect your energy, affirm your presence, bask in the charisma you so naturally exude. But when love arrives not as praise, but as care, when someone offers to hold you quietly, without the spotlight, you may hesitate. Because receiving that kind of love asks you to stop performing and simply be. And that for your Leo moon is more vulnerable than most would guess. You're used to giving. You give love as ceremony, generously, openly, with your whole chest. You show up. You carry the emotional rhythm in a room. And when someone thanks you for it, that appreciation feeds you. But when they say, "Let me take care of you now," or "You don't have to do anything," something inside you flickers. Because receiving love in its quietest form means surrendering the very thing that's kept you safe, your ability to shine. You often equate being loved with being admired. You like to be seen at your best, confident, composed, generous. But love that lingers after your mask slips, love that holds you when you're messy, irritable, unsure, that's a different kind of light. And sometimes you turn away from it, not because you don't want it, but because you're not used to being that visible without effort. This is where your moon protects you. You might deflect compliments. You might say, "I'm fine," even when you're exhausted. You might take care of everyone in the room before letting someone bring you a glass of water. It's not pride, it's protection. You fear that if you stop shining, the love will fade. You don't realize yet that the deepest intimacy comes not when you're dazzling, but when you're still and still chosen. There's also a quiet ache in you, the fear that no one will give back as much as you do, that your loyalty, your presence, your golden generosity will go unmatched. So you wait, you hint, you hope, but you rarely ask, because asking for care, for attention, for affection without performance feels like exposure. And your moon, for all its courage, can be tender to the point of hiding behind its own strength. To practice this form of intimacy, you must let love land. Let someone compliment you, and don't brush it off. Let them plan something for you, and don't insist on fixing it. Let them wrap their arms around you, not because you earned it with charm, but because they want to. Learn to sit in the silence of being valued without having to prove your worth. That's the receiving your heart craves. Unconditional warmth. You must also allow others to outshine you sometimes. Not as competition, but as reciprocity. Let your partner give, even when you don't know how to receive it. Let them show up when you feel small, when your light feels dim. Let yourself be held, not as a royalty, but as a human who needs to rest. And finally, give yourself the kind of praise you seek. Not for performance, but for presence. Tell yourself, even when I'm not impressive, I'm worthy. Let your self-love soften into self-allowance. You don't always have to command the stage. Sometimes you can just lie down in the warmth of being loved anyway. Because when your Leo moon finally lets go of earning and starts allowing, something beautiful happens. You don't stop shining, you just stop striving. You realize love isn't something you have to perform for. It's something you get to receive, fully, quietly, deservedly, again and again, without the need for applause.